Hello, everyone. Good evening from the side of the world, and good morning for the other side of the world. Thank you so much for coming to this new edition of 2020 Vision. My name is Nate, the founder of Ochodias, and as always, I'm going to be your host today. We've created this new digital space for interviews with the purpose to know and share the visions about the future that creatives have in the world. And for creatives, I mean all kinds of creatives and creativity. We know that we're living hard and uncertain times right now. So we believe that in order to have clarity in our way of seeing the world tomorrow, talking and sharing experiences, points of view, and thoughts with others is super important and will help us move away from our comfort zones and expand our perspectives. Before we start, I'd like you to tell you that we'll be doing the Q&A as always, obviously via Slido. So just go to slide.do and enter this code in the homepage 62104 for the Q&A of this session. The cool thing about Slido is that not only you can make your question anonymously, but you can also vote for your favorite question. So in that way, we can answer them according to the number of votes that question has. It's really nice. So without any further ado, let's welcome our guests. I'm super excited for our guests today, SungHee Tark. SungHee is the co-founder and CEO of VOYAGE and a freelance writer, a good one, by the way. Her and in the specialty coffee industry has initially stemmed up from her passion to understand the intersectionality of income and gender inequality, and she looked at coffee as one of the tools to address the issue. She explored this interest through academic research at the London School of Economics, where she recently finished her master's degree, yay. Her research explored the role that coffee producers' cooperatives play in promoting gender equality in farming communities and how to better engage different stakeholders. Through her work with VOYAGE, a feminist nonprofit social enterprise that she co-founded with Abhinav Kanal. Avi, hi to you.
He's probably asleep right now, but yeah.
Probably asleep right now, but he's one of the greatest human beings that are around, and we admire him a lot. So yeah, along with Abby, she collaborates with smallholder women coffee producers and youth in coffee communities to co-create a sustainable supply chain that works for all. She has also recently become the Specialty Coffee Association's lead scholar, leadership, equity, and diversity, where she has recognized for her leadership in the industry. She is also a Byron Fellow, a Rico Fellow, Davis Scholar, Entrepreneur Fellow, and an Ackerman Nicholson Scholar. I mean, it's kind of like you're in Hogwarts. Through her writing, she has written to raise awareness about the cost of coffee production, projects that empower coffee producers, and women in coffee production whose work often goes unnoticed. She regularly contributes her written work to specialty coffee magazines such as The Perfect Daily Grind, very recognized, and she hopes to continue to promote greater equity for all members of the coffee communities through her involvement in the industry. SungHee, thank you so much for being here with us today and for your time. I gotta say, this lady right here is the pure bomb.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate the kind introduction that you've made. It's a great honor to be here. You know, just speaking of Abhi again, he was the connector of, I think, of it all. You guys and Abhi met in a random hostel in San Jose, and couple of years, I would say like 3 years ago or so, right? It's been more than 2 years. And Ochodias, you guys have been, at the forefront, at the core, as well as like the core of our brand identity that is today. So we're really, really, really grateful to be part of this exciting, yet another exciting initiative that you guys are kicking off. So yeah, thank you for inviting me.
You're so happy. Now, I know that I did a small introduction, but I like to warm up the conversation with you, expanding a bit more on that intro that I just did. We can get to know you a little bit more. So your first question obviously is, what do you do and how do you get started?
Okay, so I thought about this question a little bit and I was trying to be as succinct as possible, and it's I'm gonna give it a try. So my official title at our organization is obviously the co-founder and the CEO. And I say the official because I think a lot of the job that's actually being done on the ground is shared by the entire team. So me and Abhi have co-founded this organization in 2016. And I can tell you the whole story in a very short version, where we led a first trip, our very first trip to Costa Rica in 2014, actually in December, so almost 2015, where we were leading a community project in the southern part of Costa Rica. And during our time, which was a little bit over a month, we were interacting with groups of women coffee producers, along with youth in the region. And few of the things that we learned through our time there, which was nothing to do with coffee, we were there to do community projects, spoke to us about coffee. So as we were learning on a day-to-day basis from the lives of the women producers and also youth, their life seemed to be a lot around coffee. And coincidentally, December is like the busiest coffee harvest season for Costa Rica. So obviously it makes sense, like we were organizing workshops, but people were saying that, we have to go pick coffee cherries in the morning and we're not available for the next number of hours whatsoever. And then we were learning a little bit about the life, and then started hearing a bit more about the challenges that existed in the industry. So for instance, for one, the price that they were getting paid for the coffee cherries that they were producing seemed to be very meager. When I say meager, it wasn't even 10% of the final price that I was paying as a consumer. And I think that was like a total shock for me, because I thought that, I know it's being exported to another country, and obviously there's like logistics costs and everything involved, but at the same time, they're the one that's harvesting and that's growing the plant for, I would say, almost 80% of the year. Like the plant takes usually up to 3 years for the first fruit to have. And then there's an annual harvest, and they work on the field for most of the year until it gets harvested, and then gets, roasted within like a minute, and then brewed within like a few seconds or even minutes actually. So that simple thing didn't seem to add up in a line. So that was like a question in my head, right? Like in both mine and Abhi's head, because we were both in Costa Rica at the same time. And I think that really didn't speak to us as much until we were considering, obviously, what we were going to do after graduation. So that was in our third year of university. And then we went back to university and just kind of learned about this challenge, but then kind of also forgot about this challenge, because it didn't really like stick with us right away for us to say, okay, this is the answer whatsoever for the problem. It's just like one of the many problems that you see in the world. And then I started becoming really interested in coffee as a commodity. And so did Abhi at the same time. And we were chatting about, future plan. And one of the ideas that Abhi had was, along with another friend of his, was to open a coffee shop. And for me, that was like, okay, like why coffee shop? And they were telling me about the different stories. And then we were then brought back to like the memory that we had in Costa Rica, where we actually interacted with the coffee producers. And then obviously one thing that I didn't mention was, along with the income inequality that we saw, the women were telling us a very particular story of the gender-based discrimination, the challenges that they were facing in the community, right? So then like we, traveling back to the time in 2016, right before graduation, we were just like, we were a group of friends that were just chatting our future plans over a cup of coffee, and something to do with coffee as well, because they had this idea about coffee shop. We started like evolving what the idea was, which was like a physical space, to what it is today. I wouldn't say we had right away the business plan figured out, but I think the two existing problem that we're still tackling spoke to us back then, and that's really stayed with us ever since. And going back a little bit, back to like what I do at VOYAGE, I guess I have been leading the organization's evolution from what it was starting as like a direct trade roasted coffee organization to what it is today, where we are providing training and market access to smallholder women coffee producers. So they're able to break out of that vicious cycle of lack of education leading to lack of income. To break that out of that, for them to be able to break out of that, we thought that education was a very, very important piece. So I lead the team in Costa Rica to develop and stay up to date with the curriculum, and then also the market access effort of ensuring that there is like-minded buyers who are willing to really pay the justifiable income to the producers.
To make it clear, you're one of the co-founders. Abby also is a co-founder. You are right now in South Korea. Abby in Germany.
Yeah.
Most of the team is here in America, in Costa Rica.
Right? Yeah.
How many people are we talking about, like, in the team?
So we have 3 full-time staff, including me, Abby, and Adriana, who's a country manager in Costa Rica. And then we have Fernanda, who is a paid part-time staff. And then we have Omen, who in Costa Rica. So like Omen, Fernanda, and Adriana are all in Costa Rica. Abby is in Berlin. I am currently in South Korea. I've been here for the past 2 months. And we also work with multiple volunteers that oftentimes will be staying with us in Costa Rica. But right now, given the situation, we will be trying to work with them remotely, where most of them are actually based in the US. Yeah.
Right. And talking a bit more about what it takes to build an organization as yours, and all of the skills that are needed to build it. And you study economics, right?
I did.
Do you think that background kind of like help you to like frame this new like model of like VOYAGE as an organization has, and it in a way has helped you to like deal with like all the things that an organization like goes through?
That's a really interesting question, because I guess one thing that I look back when I'm like thinking of my major is that I think it really, like the things that I studied, oh, you're drinking coffee. Yeah. Oh, I guess like one thing that really helped, like that I think really made like dent from my like studying my major economics in my undergrad was that I think I was a lot more exposed to the idea of economic development. As in, I think because of my background, when I was visiting Costa Rica, I was already kind of thinking about the existence of intersectionality of income and gender inequality, rather than, I guess, like putting like a blanket term over, okay, this is an income inequality and it exists for X number of people, or it's just a gender-based discrimination and that's the case. I think because of my background and where I went to university, I think I was prepared to understand the intersectionality and how the inequality that exists in financial term and inequality that exists in like gender can collide or like can intersect and then kind of interact and actually create like a bubble where people that fit into two identities might actually be almost invisible to some of the eyes, right? Like their challenges are very particular and it might be invisible. If you just like look at it from like the mainstream eyes of income inequality or gender-based discrimination. So I think that definitely helped my studying economics and also being exposed to the type of friends that I had in my university. But that being said, I don't think I was prepared to lead and start and build an organization. And I think that's something that we are still learning on a day-to-day basis. And it's sometimes like me and Abby, like whenever we go on this like long haul talk of like strategy, we're like, we wish there was like a secret recipe that somebody comes and tells us, okay, for you to grow your organization, you should do X, Y, Z. Because it seems like there is a certain rule of a sort, but there isn't. And it's quite unique for each organizations, and it's your job as the founders to kind of make that choice for the path forward, because there are going to be like multiple option choices of like, you can go this way, and you can also go that way based on like the ancestors or like predecessors path. But maybe it's also our job to say, okay, all of this didn't work. Maybe what we need to do is like an alternative way, and learning from the mistakes or lessons that other organizations have learned. We're kind of like adapting to develop and constantly refine what it is that we are today, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Avi, if I remember well, he studied politics. I don't know the correct his title in college, but I mean, you guys work like are kind of like made to work in the UN. But I think most people will think that being an economist will be like, oh, that people is boring, and they're always thinking about numbers, and they only have to know like how the world works. And I mean, they're very like plain people that they're not creatives at all. But I really want to reach this question because I think that because you still don't have an actual model, that you're still like changing and exploring things and trying new things. I think you guys use creativity like in your field like really, really like well done. So I wanted to know, how do you feel about your own creativity in that sense? And how do you apply it, not only for VOYAGE, but maybe like you'll say like your day-to-day basis, or backwards, like how do you use it in your day-to-day and then VOYAGE?
I think this, among the questions that you said, I think this was like the hardest to answer or like even think of the answer to, because I feel like, first of all, like for me, I do not consider myself to be like, the creative of the organization or the creative person of this planet per se. Because I think a lot of times, like as you said, like I also in my backhand thought that creativity belongs to people who are in art, and creativity belongs to people who are in like music and like in different parts of the industry, and not maybe where I am. But I think recently I've been thinking maybe that's like the old way of defining creativity. And as you were saying, and I think more so of, creativity can be being open-minded and just being able to learn from different experiences, whether it's business ideas or whatsoever, and then finding the right way that works for you. In like, that's how I would define right, not saying like, that's the right way, but finding the right way that works for you to really like take it forward. So in that way, in that definition, I feel like both Avi and I have remained very agile because we have been able to stay open-minded, and I would say we do have a pillars that we are working with, right? That's like an education piece and market access, and we know where we're going at the end of the tunnel. We know that our mission is to build an equitable value chain for smallholder women producers, and we know where we are, and we know what are the tools that we have, and that will get us there. And I think it's like the creativity then is to fill up the other gaps of like, who are we going to work with? How are we going to work with these people? How are we going to communicate that? So it's a learning in progress for me. I wouldn't say, oh, I've got it all kind of figured out. I would never say that, because I think it's like constantly a work in progress thing. So that's how I feel about my own creativity. And then I will say that's also how we are applying that on a day-to-day operation at VOYAGE, of trying to look at all the empty pieces as like a blank paper, and then just imagine what's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of like a misconception that creativity belongs to creatives, that people that make art and music, and it's a painter or whatever. That's why we kind of wanted to do this interviews, because we found that all of us are creatives in our own way, and we use it, as you said, uh, in a way that works for us and for the things that we want to build or develop.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious about to know how are you feeling about that, because in the inside, maybe you guys don't know that you are being very creative, like in the work that you do, because you're constantly like working and speaking to people and talking to stakeholders and talking to your team and seeing new ways of doing things, and that's a really good way to to develop your own creativity. um, but yeah, I mean, how how do you think you, I mean, besides Spin Voyage and talking a little bit more about you, like,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that we're living right now like a very like weird time. Um, so in your life, in your day-to-day basis, I mean, do you still like feel like, besides of your work, do you still feel that you use creativity for your own purposes, or I don't know, doing things differently, or upgrading to another ways or other things that you, I don't know, maybe your approach was different, or you look at it in some way that now you don't and you changed it?
That's a very good question, because I feel like a lot of things during this pandemic is still, right? Like everybody is in their lockdown, and there is, almost seems like there is an upper limit to how creative you can get, right? Because it's like, yeah, you can really go crazy and be creative in your daily life, but you can't go out, or like, you have to wear your mask, or there's like always kind of like a upper limit to it. So in that way, I feel like that's true, but at the same time, I feel like the way I've been trying to remain productive, and I think I can also talk about like some of the challenges that later on, but has been trying to change up things that I do on a day-to-day basis slightly, so that I feel small excitement on a day-to-day basis, to just keep me going. And I think that's one way that I'm trying to stay creative, even if it means listening to different podcasts every morning, or there are certain rules that I'm following every single day, regardless of where I am. So like, I wake up, I open my eyes, and the first thing I need to do is yoga. Otherwise, I'm just like a zombie for the rest of the day. So even if it's like 10 minutes break that I have, I will do yoga. And then I will keep on going. That's not going to change. But what comes after that will be different. So maybe I'll switch up what I'm going to eat for breakfast, or tiny things. I'm going to brew different kinds of coffee. Maybe yesterday I drank like, hot coffee from Ethiopia, and today I'm going to drink cold coffee from Kenya or Costa Rica or whatsoever. So I think that's where my creativity lies right now. I'm trying to keep my mind also busy by just, absorbing different scenes and different books and different things that's, still available for me regardless of where I am. But only on like what I'm actually actively doing, I'll say that's where I am in my creativity.
There's always kind of like struggles. I mean, we all
Yeah.
struggle with something, and obviously right now is a very like uh, we're living like unprecedented times. So everything for us changed. And we all have struggled with something. And in our lives and in our journeys and experiences, like building, I mean, you with your organization, in my case with my creative studio, we have had challenges and very like, I mean, that you question yourself, like, should I keep going or should I stay or should I keep going, should I stay, or should I like drop it, you know? And I think I would like to know from you, uh, what are the biggest challenges of your work? And with this, I would like you to tell me more about your role in being VOYAGE. I mean, being the CEO, women in a position of like, and how it's to be, I mean, how it's like to be a woman in the coffee industry where men are like mostly seen in that industry.
Yeah, that's a really broad question, but at the same time, like a really interesting one, because I think maybe I can start with like the smart part of what I do at VOYAGE, and then talk about like the bigger challenges part, and then kind of link it to the women. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is a lot, like right now, is on strategic planning. Given the situation that we are in, we've also decided to take a few things slowly, of like us not having to be on the ground constantly with our communities. We've kind of like taken a step back, and I'm spending a lot more time with Abby on the call, and with our board of directors, kind of strengthening and streamlining all the strategies that are to be executed from 2021 onwards, right? So that's a big chunk of my time. And in addition to that, I co-lead project like program development with our team in Costa Rica. So we recently had a pivot where all of the in-person training that we were providing to our producers were no longer an option. And we were supposed to be rolling out over 80 hours of training over the next few months, by meeting them on a daily, weekly basis, and providing them with like the necessary information and tools to continue farming after their harvest was done in March. And obviously that's not an option. Like we can no longer meet them, and social distancing, and a lot of our producers are in their 60s or 50s, and they fall into the category of like, the most vulnerable to COVID. So the moment we heard one case in Costa Rica, we like stopped everything in Costa Rica just to take the cautious approach to it. And what we've been doing recently is turning that curriculum that was to be done in person to an online training material. And I think it was a big pivot because there was not a model to actually follow, because options like Zoom, options like Moodle or video calls were not a viable option for the producers that we work with, because they often don't count with a laptop. Like they do not really have an easy access to a laptop, nor a phone with a lot of storage on their phone. So, and in addition to that, obviously the connectivity is a problem. Like if we were to do a live, it will be a problem to have all the 67 producers that we work with on a live session at the same time on a video call. So we had like those three challenges for us to be able to turn our in-person training into something virtual that obviously a lot of other people in the coffee industries are right now doing. Instead of in-person conferences, people are now on Zoom webinars and things like that. But that was not an option for the producers that we work with. Most of the producers, not everyone, but like majority, I'll say. Then we had to quickly think of a method that is as accessible as our in-person training has been. And then we looked at WhatsApp. And WhatsApp has been something that we've been using since 2016. You weren't aware of this? Okay, so we are using WhatsApp as a way to, WhatsApp, as a way to communicate and share learning materials. So that pivot happened, I would say, within 2 weeks time period, where we decide, okay, like Zoom is not an option. All this list of e-learning platform that we had actually researched were not an option. So what can we do? And we said, we are using WhatsApp with all of our producers, whether they're 16 years old or 60 years old. We've had success in communicating what we have to do through voice notes, images. So why not follow that? So we've turned over the past few weeks our entire curriculum into something that's WhatsApp friendly. That meant our instructors, instead of recording a video, were given an instruction to record short voice notes, obviously because you don't have as much attention span when it's just a voice note. So it's like a maximum of 2 minutes voice notes where they're narrating like a key concepts that are essential. And our team have worked on creating diagrams and illustrations and visual things to go with the voice notes. In addition to that, we usually spend a lot of our in-person training playing games so that they're able to kind of get to know each other, but also for us to test their knowledge, right? But right now on WhatsApp, what we've done is also we've created games that they can play online. So it included hangman, it included quizzes, like, fast, true, or false quizzes with like pictures. It also has sopa de letras and different kinds, or like another one was, I think, we had Adriana and Fernanda recalled role play, and they had to, pick out what's actually wrong in their practices and things like that. That was interactive, so that we are able to also gauge the participation rate and also like their learning progress. So we just finished actually last week the first module, which was 4 sessions, 4 live sessions with all of the groups, including the master courses, where we have 2-hour Q&A sessions with an instructor, and all our producers join this one massive WhatsApp group, and then they on live ask questions to our instructor by text or voice notes, so that they're able to actually access it. So that pivoting is something that both Abby and I led with our Costa Rican team the past few weeks. And next week, we're going to be launching another module on finance. And it's still obviously in the pilot phase, but I think we're really happy with like the outcome of it so far, because we just conducted our evaluation, and 95% of our participants said they're very satisfied with the learning and the progress. And they actually see this to be something that they can continue to learn from, rather than only in person, right? So that was one of the things that I was leading the past few weeks. And the last part obviously is the market access. So I lead the market access part for VOYAGE as a whole. Abby leads fundraising with donors, and I manage the relationship with our buyers and the coffee coffee experts and coffee professionals. So that's been going on right now because the harvest wrapped up in March, and we are right now signing contracts, and we have a few containers, not all of our coffee full, obviously. We have like different moving pieces that will be leaving the port of Costa Rica end of May, beginning of June. So right now, a lot of my time, in addition to obviously the strategic planning, is spent streamlining the information between different actors and making sure that what we promised of the final price, which is the FOB price, let's say, the price that gets written in the contract for the buyers to buy, 96% of that goes back to the producer. So we are working with everyone along the supply chain to make sure that most of the the export price actually goes back to producers, in comparison to a very tiny bit that has been going back. So yeah, I am wearing multiple different hats, but I wouldn't say I'm leading any of that alone. I have an amazing team who's super flexible and have been super creative in the way and open-minded too. Yeah.
I love how you kind of like the question, what are the biggest challenge of your work, and you turn it into the opportunity of the lifetime, and I mean, who would have thought that WhatsApp will be the way to do this program, and you guys will have like 95% of like all people like really happy with it, and that's amazing to achieve.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, I mean, in creativity you have to exercise a lot of, like, it's a constant exercise, and you guys obviously have done a lot of observation exercises with your communities, with the communities you're working with all of these women and all these ladies that are actually, as you said, in their 50s and 60s, that they don't actually have access to technology. And right now access to technology is kind of like, if you don't have access to technology, you can just, like, I mean, be considered, I don't know, in, what do you say, like, in a way of like poverty or something. So
Mm.
um, having those access, I mean, if they don't have access to technology, then how can you bring them to still in this moment to still learn and still, like, be being aware of all the programs and still learn and still, like, have fun with the learning. I think that's one of the most amazing things. So now that we're talking about, like, well, challenges and opportunities, and you guys did this amazing work with WhatsApp that I think is one of your main channels to, like, do everything.
Mm.
uh, and as we talked earlier, you guys are in three different like continents: Asia, Europe, and America. And it's like, if, like, everybody is kind of like crazy because we're maybe in the same country and everybody is, like, doing home, like, work office, like, no, how do you say it? Like, home
Home office.
office.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and they're like, people is driving themselves crazy because they don't know what to do, and still you guys are in three continents and making it work. So that's crazy. That's amazing. So I would like to know, what is it like, and if you have any tips or anything to people that are still, like, struggling with that. What is it like to work remotely with um, your team, being on different continents?
Yeah.
And I, and as we said, the vast majority of your team is led by women. So what is it like?
Yeah, it's I think it's a really interesting question because I think we were talking about this the other day, your team works mostly remotely even before the pandemic, right? And this has always been the case for us too. We don't really have a physical office space. We do have a place in Costa Rica where we'll meet, and if there is, like, an in-person meeting is required, then we'll come together and we'll be using the space. But a lot of the times we actually prefer to work from our home, and we find that more efficient because we're saving a lot of time from not having to commute and not having to do multiple things that comes with going to an office. So I guess remote work has never really been like, oh my gosh, like, out of the box, out of the blue thing. But now that I think now I'm in Korea, something that's been added recently has been, now we are all in different time zones. So like I think, like, long answer short, what we've learned from remote working and how to efficiently do that among team, even if you're in the same country, is setting up key times along the week to check in, because I think we do not have the same kind of personal interaction that you get if you were to go into an office, for instance, because you work on a project from remotely. And I think what happens with that is that sometimes you lose the sense of personal connection to your colleague. And I think a lot of the times we derive so much satisfaction to be working on a certain project with a person or with a specific colleague or a team rather than alone, right? And I think that's the reason why we work in a team. But then because we work so far away from each other, we can sometimes lose that. So we do have check-in, which isn't only about work, and I think it's also about getting to know each other and actually playing. And now that we are in different time zone and all that, we've also been trying to implement a fun theme 2-hour weekly check-in where we dress up. There's a theme. So yes, it's on, it's on Fridays where it's called Friday Wins, and we discuss at a, everyone comes together dressed up with a certain theme, and then we discuss what we've achieved over the week. So it's quite it's really good in a way that we're celebrating our success for the past 1 week, but we're also kind of like laughing at each other's costume, because the theme is, for instance, yesterday one was camping, and the other day was like 80s, and the other day was like birthday party with like purple unicorn as a theme, right? So then there are like this one theme and people interpret it differently, and then you kind of just like get to know the other person's creativity as well. Like there's this one thing and you really take your creativity to interpret what that means. So I think that's really important, that like not only checking in regarding your work and work progress, but also really making sure to check in with them on a personal level, and actually making sure that there is this team bonding activity that goes beyond to-do list, right? And I think another thing that we have early on implemented is making the best use of a lot of softwares and platforms that are out there to help you manage your project. So that means we've tested out a lot of different softwares, and we've gone through like list of things. And Abhi is like a pioneer of that. He loves just going out and like researching all this kind of tools. And then we experimented, and then we also experimented with the entire team. And then we see what we like, what we don't like, if it's something that we're going to use, something that we are not going to use, and then we move on. So something that stayed with us till date, in addition to I think Google Drive, which I think a lot of people use, is Slack as like the communicational channel. I think a lot of teams are now using it, but also something that we found recently called Notion. It's I think it's a lot of different tools that we've used in the past in one single workspace. So that means you're also able to create documents just like Google Drive. You can also create to-do lists among the teams and then, assign people. You can also do CRM, customer relations management, and different things that allows you to really creatively also express using emojis, and they're like really good at integrating different elements, photos and everything in the inner space. So that's, I think, making use of resources and like the platforms that are out there to help you actually increase productivity. There's so many that are out there. So just knowing what works for your team, I think has been good. One other app that I recently added to my desktop is called There, and that shows the time. So you can set different time zone to be at your desktop. So I put Abi, Berlin, Adri, Fer, and Costa Rica. So then by clicking it, I know what time it is for them before sending them a WhatsApp, for instance. So instead of sending them a WhatsApp, if it's a past work hour, I'll communicate through Slack. So just kind of like, trying to be a bit more conscious of where they are and what they're doing when you're communicating a certain thing, to be the most efficient that you can at it.
That's what a CEO does. People learn. Yeah. Then where you guys like get together in Fridays, like in Zoom? Is kind of like a Zoom party or something?
Yeah, so it's usually like it's an hour-long Zoom call where obviously like a lot of people, when we tune in, like we hide our camera. So we don't turn on our camera for the surprise factor, for an example. And then we actually like kind of laugh about it. We have like 10 minutes that we dedicate to check in. So there's an activity or it's like a casual check-in depending on who's leading it. And then we spend about 30 minutes going through everyone's project list and then seeing how much progress we've made and what's the area that we need another person's help. So it's not only about saying, okay, I've worked on this, but it's more about like, I've worked on this, but I've seen this element, and that's where I need your help. So like I'll be assigning someone, or I'll be asking if there is an availability for their schedule in the coming week to work with me on that. And then we spend rest of the time working on open project. So we kind of have like the last 20 minutes or so empty, where people will bring on something to the table and then discuss as a team. So yesterday one was on a video that we are going to be launching in a few days, where producers have shared their experiences and all that. So we played that and then had feedback right away. So whoever is working on the project, in this case, Abby, can implement that and then launch it right after. So yeah, that's usually like on Friday. And we have Monday calls where in the beginning of the week where we do set up the to-do list together, but it also involves check-in. But obviously this doesn't involve dressing up, because I think on Monday mornings, people do not feel, like you're not going to wake up at 8 a.m. in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to dress up, so yeah, we kind of leave that part empty for Monday calls, but Monday it's when we kind of come together and set the agenda for the week. And on Friday we come together as a team to go through the list. And it doesn't mean that we don't have smaller meetings throughout the week. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, me and Abby get on a call for an hour each day to kind of go through the strategic part, and like we call it the office hour. But we also have like smaller team meeting where it's specifically about sales, that we will be organizing like once a week check-in call with all the people that are working on sales project and things like that. So we try to create as many, but as also as few as possible, the meetings, just to make it as essential, so that we're not spending so much time on online and not really having downtime to work on projects. But
I would love to see your workflow and your kind of like your timeline with the projects. Like that will be amazing. Moving on, SungHee, because we have a lot of more questions.
Oh yeah.
Transition is not going to be like as smooth because of time, but what are the things you're most passionate about working with coffee? And add in one, what's your favorite one? Or do you have like several favorite ones?
Oh, okay. I'll say one thing that I love about my job is people. I think the reason why I was also drawn to coffee initially, in addition to like, having this intersectionality of gender and income inequality as a problem that exists, the reason why I thought the coffee could be a tool is that it's drank by everyone that I know. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter where you live. I think coffee, as cliche as it sounds, it really unites people. And I think that's what I'm learning on a day-to-day basis. Like, coffee led to so many new friendships that I cherished to date. On a day, I really, really cherish all these relationships, but it's such a thing where you can, tell anyone that you really want to get to know. It's like, do you want to grab a coffee? And you actually get to know them. You don't say, let's go out and get a full meal. Like, I don't know why that never really happens, but like, you should be able to do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to do it. You should really be able to say like, let's go out and get like a full meal, because I'm a big foodie too. But like, coffee remains that way of like, it's a connector. In addition to it being like delicious, and there's so many like sensory elements to it that I really enjoy learning about, like agricultural nature, and everyone behind it, but also kind of just people and how it serves as a connector for everyone that drinks coffee.
What's your favorite one? Or what's the one that you're drinking more often right now?
Oh, well, I have to be biased. I love Costa Rican coffee. It doesn't matter if it's natural process, honey process, and there are multiple ways that you can process coffee, but I love it all regardless. Obviously, sorry, it's gonna just walk by. Yeah, I'll say I really like Latin American coffee. There is like this acidity that's like really bright, and a lot of fruity note that I really enjoy. And honestly, I'm not really picky about coffee. Right now, I'm drinking this coffee a friend of mine gifted me. He's experimented his roast the other day with Ethiopian coffee. And it's delicious. It's like lemon candy. Like hard lemon candy in like liquid form. So I love it, and I've been like really liking it as my first drink in the morning. But in general, I think I just really like fruity, bright coffee. No, yeah.
I agree with the Latin American and especially Costa Rican coffee. Like for me, it's been one of the best coffees I've tried in my life. Like seriously, SungHee, do you have a mantra?
Yes, and I think it's as if I'm gonna keep it really short. As yeah, everything's gonna work out. Thoughts will connect.
Exactly. Yeah. Mantras are really important for like for you to keep going with things. Like it helps you a lot in that way. So can you repeat it again?
Everything is going to work out. Thoughts will connect eventually.
That's beautiful. On to the future now. With all the situation like happening in the world, but we all know it, which has forced us to lock ourselves in our homes and everything. I would like to know what have you learned in isolation these days?
um, yeah, I think I guess like the first thing that I learned is that it's, I think also speaking from my personal experience, is that a lot of us, a lot of people derive self-worth from feeling productive and efficient. And I think that was one of the first realization, because I was struggling with it. I was questioning if I was being a valuable member to the society, or I was being good to myself, because I didn't really feel productive. And I think retrospect, like, and like still something that I'm working on is that we are trying to stay productive while everything is falling apart, right? And there, I think there's like a few famous quotes and Facebook and Instagram images that's like circulating, where they're saying like it's okay for you to not to be productive because, you know, we are dealing with so many other things. And I think that like that realization was one of the first things that I had to accept. And I said, you know, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm staying healthy. I am staying true to myself. I'm not faking my emotions, and I am accepting where I am. And I think that was like the biggest lesson learned. And I think in addition to that, I think something that I knew, but then I think I was made more aware of, is the power of people and individuals when they come together. So like power of collective to do something, if it's a shared vision, I'm being made like aware of it and reminded of it on a day-to-day basis, where you know, there's so much to it than what we at times can say in a very cliche way. Yeah.
Thanks, I know. And talking about lessons and what you take to grow as a person, and in a way, those lessons uh, kind of drive you to maybe have a better connection with people and have a better society. Um, and especially like the work you do in VOYAGE and your role that I think is super important. Um, I wanted to talk I want you to talk about more about this. What are the lessons you've learned from working with women coffee producers? And which one do you think can or should be applied for the future?
That's deep. Definitely. I'll try to connect. I think one of the lessons that really spoke to me, you know, for the past 3-4 years that we've been working on Bin Voyage, has been heart speaks louder than numbers. And I look back at that because when we started, we were fresh out of college. We didn't have any data to show our producer partner or potential partners that it's gonna work out. It's a model that we're hoping to launch and it's gonna work out. And we didn't have any of that, right? It was more of us meeting them and getting to know them individually and hearing their specific, unique stories, and then trying to go to the drawing board together with them and then shape a future that could work for all of us. So none of that involved numbers to begin with because we didn't have the data to back up. But we did have two producers to start with. Like they really trusted us, and they said, okay, let's try it for a year. And soon after, we were able to have a little bit of data from the two producers, and then work with 17 producers, where we still didn't have enough data to convince them. And then we just were sharing our stories and getting to know them. And they really trusted us as individuals. And I think those two groups that were very initial, I think what really speaks about them is that our model has evolved a lot along the line, right? We were not doing what we are doing today back in the day, but they stayed with us to be open to evolve with us and grow with us. And I think that's because there was a strong personal connections that we built where they not only believed in our vision per se, but it also was the connection, personal connection that we had between hearts. And yeah, and I think that's something that we oftentimes do not, I'm not going to say we don't value it because I think we do, but I think we undervalue that in comparison to, for instance, economic value that we can drive from an organization or financial growth that an organization is expected to have. So I want this to actually stay with us, I think, regardless of our growth and like our size. And it's something that I hope that everybody, a lot of people in the industry and like beyond can relate to. And I think I will say so because I think coffee a lot of time is really relationship based. But yeah.
Oh, it's so lovely. And going further with the future and what we imagine about like how the future will be, what do you think the future will be for Bean Voyage and the role of women in the coffee industry?
Yeah. So the future of Bin Voyage, if you're looking at like the future, I think our hope is that we don't need to exist. Because our mission statement is to build an equitable value chain, right? And equitable meaning gender equity and income equity, so that there's a fair distribution across everyone along the value chain, no matter your gender or your sexual orientation or wherever you are, in terms of how the money is being distributed. And how resources are being distributed, and how everything else is being distributed. So our future, obviously our hope is that our mission is no longer relevant because we do have an equitable value chain and we will be unemployed and we'll be looking for new things to do. And I think I would really enjoy that if that was to happen even tomorrow. If that could be the case, I would not hold any grudges for like, oh, our organization is dying, because our organization is made to die eventually, like made to disappear eventually, right? So that's, I think, what I can say about the future. And that being said, I think a lot of the thought leaders right now, including Naomi Klein, who wrote like the shock doctrine, is talking about how right now is a crucial time for us to imagine anything for our society coming forward, right? It's the crucial time where everything that we thought was a strong foundation is falling apart and it's breaking. And right now, like, there has not been a better time. And obviously after 2008, we've missed that opportunity in 2008 where there's a global, economic crisis. But right now it's actually like every single person, no matter where you are being affected. And this might be the good time for us to be reimagine what the future society could look like. And I hope everyone's equation that is different involves something along the line of equity, if it means income or gender, whatever they think is essential for the society. But I think the equity piece, I hope that's part of everyone's equation.
Wow, what a statement. We're almost to our last question. I want a reminder before we get into our last question, go to Slido, and enter the code 622104 and start writing your questions for SungHee. So last one, SungHee, the overall picture, like the last of the last of the last. how do you imagine the world to be at the end of this decade? And this is kind of like an exercise of, like an imagination creative exercise of that.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I think after saying what I said, anything is imaginable. Well, yeah, like I think like in short sentence, we won't exist at the end of this decade. We'll be doing something else, and I'll be more than happy to. And if I just speak from like my perspective of like working in gender, I really hope this happens. There is a complete gender equity and equality, I guess, across your regions, age, job, or whatever when it comes to pay, your agency, you know, the sense of agency you're able to feel, your ability to take on leadership role, your ability to do whatever. Yeah, I guess like that's one part. And another part is that producers, and everyone along the coffee supply chain and agricultural supply chain, I think, more broadly speaking, will be paid fairly, and will be able to get out of the exploitative system that has been set up based on the colonial history, the way the trade has been set up for certain commodities, including cacao and coffee. So everyone will be free of that. And beyond that, maybe we'll have a new way of looking at how the economy would work, beyond how it's been in the past. So yeah.
And that was SungHee Tark 2020 Vision. Thank you, SungHee, so much.
Thank you.
For sharing your experiences, your visions. We have a bonus track.
Ooh, yeah.
And this is basically for fun. It's very quickly taken from the Inside the Actor Studio, a show, one of my favorite shows that I watch in film arts. So the show was a one-on-one interview with very famous actors and actresses, conducted by James Lipton. And at the end of the interview, he submitted a questionnaire to the guest. Here are the 10 questions that Lipton asked. So you're ready, SungHee?
Yep. Your face, I have to be like.
What's your favorite word?
Love and care. They're 2 words, but yeah, love, love, love. Not in a romantic way, but like in a broader way.
What's your least favorite word?
Ignore.
What turns you on?
Piping hot bowl of kimchi hot pot. No, passionate conversations.
What turns you off?
I'll say ignorance. It's a repetition, but ignorance. Yeah.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh, my ice melted. So ice inside a cup of like coffee. I wanted to like show you. The scratching sound of like the chalk, you know, scratching chalk across the board. I really can't stand it. Like, yeah.
What's your favorite curse word?
The one that I use, shoot. Are you disappointed?
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I was thinking of this question as I was doing yoga, and then I thought yoga instructor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. What profession would you not like to do?
As much as I love this job, I think I'll be terrible at it. Teacher.
Ooh. Weird.
My mom's a teacher, and I like see everything up close, and I don't think I'll be good.
Last one. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome. You've done your job.
Oh, yes. Applause. SungHee, this was 2020 Vision, SungHee Tark. Let's go right away to the Slido very quickly. I'm going to jump into the Slido and try to, oh my God. There's a lot of questions. Can you vote? please, like very quickly on these questions, so we can just like select a few because there's a lot. I would like to like do them all, but well, let's try to do them all. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one, what's the new thing in the coffee industry?
Like new thing, I think from the coffee consumption side is different from what's new thing in coffee production side, right? So let's say there are like obviously like this whole trend with like home barista, like, you know, making coffee at home, and like that's quite new in a way that a lot of people are doing tutorials to better brew your coffee at home because nobody's able to go to coffee shop no longer. And I guess like one of the outcome of that is dalgona coffee, which is, or like it originates from Korea, and where people are like whipping their coffee 1,000 times and then making this foam, and then there are like thousands of videos that shows you how to do it. So that's, I would say, like one of the new thing. On the processing and production part, there are a few new methodologies that are becoming popular. I wouldn't say they're new because fermentation has always been part of coffee processing, but I think it's you know, gaining attention from the consumer side as well. So the more producers are actually like tweaking how they ferment their coffee, using yeast, just like in wine, to process their coffee, and all that. Yeah. So that's, I think, some of the new things. Yeah.
What do you think are the places where an exciting coffee culture is emerging?
I think if you asked me this question maybe like 5 years ago, I'll say Korea, because Korea has been like the booming market the last few years. I think it's plateauing right now in Korea. I think China has been like a new player where a lot of younger generations are turning from tea drinkers, only being, you know, drinking tea, to coffee. So they're skipping like the whole wave of like the evolution that the States has gone through of like, you know, drinking like instant coffee at home and then going to Starbucks and then going to specialty. They're jumping ahead. So like China is interesting. I've been recently told about Middle Eastern market, researched a little bit into it and did like a small article on that as well. So that's like two market, I think there are, you know, something is, yeah, happening there.
Wow. What is the value that women coffee producers add to the industry?
Rather than them adding to the industry, I'll say they're actually the backbone of the industry that remain invisible. So at least half of the workforce on the coffee farm across the world are women. In some cases up to 70%. So some studies in Africa show actually like 70% of the workforce is women on coffee farms. But if you look at like the land ownership, only about 25% of those farms belong to women. So there's a huge disparity of like what they do, of like them still remaining at the very I don't want to call it basic because it's a really core element of the work, but you know, they're still far away from the ownership and actually being able to stay lucrative in the industry. So if we recognize that, I think the value that we get from the recognition of that is that we will get gender equity, and we'll actually increase the productivity that we are able to have from farm as well by giving them more resources, because women-owned farms like resources and finance as well.
So let's see. Oh my God, what happened?
Oh, people voted, and I think yes, like changed the list.
Changing. Any book, podcast you'll recommend?
Oh, I love podcasts and I love books. And the books that I've recently read, they're actually right here. One is Good to Great, and another one is Principles by Ray Dalio. So Good to Great is by Jim Collins.
I need it. I mean, I want that book, The Principles by Dalio.
It's good. Like I've highlighted like this is how big the book is, and like every single page has like a lot of markers because I'm like, oh my God, this guy's picked so well. They'll say, like, I'll say these are the two books that I read recently, especially as we're doing the strategic planning, and Measure What Matters is another good book. But if we're looking at like nonfiction, that's something that's been on my radar. The other ones more on like fiction side, the books that I've read recently includes The Bees, and something that I really like and I keep going back to is by Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, and like her series on that. I think that's something that I like, time to time go back to, because it's just surreal how real that fiction that was written in 1985, I believe, is, and how relevant that is to today's world. For podcasts, there are a few that I listen to, and the most, I guess, like the one that I thought of right now is On Being by Krista Tippett, and How I Built This, and BBC's Food Chain. I think that's something that I recently got really into. Yeah.
Most of us women face the imposter syndrome. Do you experience it a lot, and how have you dealt with it to truly rise and shine?
Oh, thank you for the question. I think I didn't really get to touch upon that element earlier because we had a whole segue on something else. You did ask me about how I feel about women, being a woman. I do deal with imposter syndrome, and I think it's being a woman is one thing, and another thing is also being a woman in an industry that's dominated by men. And in addition to that, like being a woman of color, I think just adds like triple combo to what you're already struggling with. I do experience it as an answer to your first question, and how have I dealt with it to truly rise and shine. Thank you for, I guess, for that word, because I think that's something that sometimes I struggle with because of the imposter syndrome, to accept that I'm rising and shining. It's a step that I need to be constantly working on to fill in. One thing that has worked out really well for me is seeking women mentors, and really connecting with them, and not only on a work, like professional level, but on a personal level, and having that time to really learn about their experiences and have their guidance on some of the things that you might be struggling with. And something that you'll quickly realize is that maybe it was just like an external validation that I needed, for somebody that I really admire, to say, you're actually on the right track, or a lesson that I'm able to just like learn from hers to get inspired, rather than feeling like I'm the only one in this, and yeah, just kind of creating that sisterhood, I would say, with other women in the field has really served me to stay strong. Attempt to rise and shine. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, how do you think?
Networks are such an important part of your growth, and like building that sisterhood and that community helps hell of a lot. You don't know like how powerful it is when all of us women get together and talk about like our failures or successes, like what we've been going through, like all these difficulties, and maybe one I don't know, like very experienced women can tell you like, you're doing okay. I mean, it's okay, and like this is just a chapter of your life.
Yeah.
It's really needed. So being a foreign woman, did you have any difficulties in approaching the coffee communities in Costa Rica?
Yeah, I had to be really honest and say, I think one realization that I have is, because I don't look like a typical Costa Rican, a lot of the times I'm always seen as, oh, you're on a small, or you're on a short-term project with our communities. And it was a lot harder initially to convince people, because people are exposed to a lot of different short-term tourism projects where people say, oh, we're going to do this, but we're going to go away within like 2 months or even a year. We did have that difficulty to begin with, but I think once we had that tribe of women who were super behind us and knew that we were around all the time, and who are connected to our personal social media and always just commenting on whatever we post, and I think having that really strong collective help us grow beyond what we started with. So like they became our ambassadors without us having to tell them. So they went out and talked about our work. They went out and shared what we are doing, not only just us as an organization, but like with them. So yesterday I was actually talking to like someone that I had not met, an exporter, and we were talking about like some of the logistics, and he said like, oh, I just heard actually about your work. You work with this community. And apparently the producer like came up to them and actually just like shared. And so, you know, like partnership that just came out of it without us having to like even try, because people just really believe in us. So obviously initially it did take us a lot of time to build that, but I think now I'm so happy and like, you know, grateful to say that we have a strong collective and base that are voluntarily becoming our ambassadors and really believe in our mission.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
our shared mission.
The next one, I want VOYAGE coffee now. How can I get it? It's also a great way to support you. It's also a great way to support you.
Yeah. Yes, it's a very great way to support us. Thank you so much for your thoughts. On that, I'll first have to know where you're based. So I think the best way is to get in touch with VOYAGE Coffee, our Instagram handle. And I'll be able to figure out a few logistics for you depending on where you are. And also please follow us on VOYAGE Coffee account, because we are right now looking to launch a fundraiser to provide relief support, you know, COVID relief effort for the smallholder producers that we work with. So by following our Instagram, you'll be able to stay up to date.
We already just asked this one. What are the most important points to create value chain around coffee?
The most important points to create value chain around coffee. I might not be getting the question right. Maybe what I'm interpreting is that what's the most important points to create value around coffee? Because I think the value chain, like I say value chain when we talk about supply chain, because I think there is value along the chain. So what's the most important value? I think it really, I feel like if you ask somebody who started coffee 10 years ago, might have a different answer to it. And I think that's how also it has been, the coffee supply has been changed, coffee supply chain has been shaped over the past few years. But right now, I'll say there are multiple ways that you can create value. I think one is really leveraging and giving story and personal face to the product that you have. So not only living it at like, oh, it's a collective of women, but actually getting to know each individual yourself, but also telling that story to the consumer. So they're able to have that direct virtual connection, quote unquote, right? Through that. So I guess like that's one way. And I think there are multiple ways that different organizations are trying out. I can't really speak to any of that as like the way to create value, because I think a lot of us right now have realized that the previous model that we had of just relying on direct relationship buying may not be visible and may not be applicable to everyone. Because what if you're a producer that doesn't speak any English, therefore not able to build a relationship with a buyer who doesn't speak Spanish, for instance, right? So there are still different gaps that needs to be filled for, I guess like that filling in the gap will be another way to create more value for the coffee supply chain, coffee value chain. Yeah. So
from your point of view and role, what are the skills that a CEO should have nowadays?
That's a really hard one, because I don't think I can say, yeah, this is the answer. Thank you for adding the from your perspective. Thank you for adding that, because I think that really keeps me grounded. Because I can say, you know, you should have this, because I'm working towards it. Empathy, I think, would be something that really needs to stay at the core of the CEO skill set. And I think a lot of other things are something that you can learn. So, you know, like project management tools, relationship management, fundraising, and a lot of different things are skills that I think anybody can learn, even if you're a CEO or not, right? But I think as a leader of an organization, and I'm speaking for me and Abby, both as co-founders, what we've really stayed true to have been remaining empathetic to the work that we do. And that means being able to understand the people that we work with, not only producers, but all the other kind of stakeholders that we are working with, right? And I think that's really served us to build a lasting relationship. And I think lasting relationship is an outcome of that empathy piece that's really crucial for any organization to last and thrive.
3 most important things or tips when starting an organization.
Okay, don't be afraid to ask for help. Write that damn email, even if you're not gonna get a reply. Just like send them if you think that there's a value that that person can provide. Really value and cherish relationship. I think a lot of the things that we are doing right now is a result of a relationship that could have fallen through, that could have not, lasted. But I think really spending and investing time to build relationship with people that you have missions aligned or visions aligned or even values aligned, I think it's really important. The third point is just know that you will probably not stay with the initial thought that you started your organization with. And I think that acceptance is really important for you to stay agile and flexible, but also creative and open-minded and actually evolve. And I think that element is important for you to stay relevant wherever you are and, in the stage of the organizational growth. Yeah.
Awesome. The last one, I don't know if you want to answer it because I think you talked about earlier in our conversation. So I don't know if you want to just like quickly how do you manage the workflow of your organization in the midst of a crisis?
Yeah, so I guess earlier I was talking about like managing the team in different continents. That's like a result of our, like the pandemic, the pandemic that we're having. So it's more about, like I said, managing the tools that already exist has been something really important. Workflow, I think check-ins are becoming really, really important to also make it personal and make it fun. And I think just also being true to yourself and knowing your own workflow and how that fits into everyone else's workflow, and just being aware of the fact that not everybody will be doing as well as they were doing prior to this pandemic, because everybody has a lot more on their shoulder now with mental and emotional stress that that we get on a day-to-day basis. So just, yeah, I think being aware of that will help you manage the workflow better. Yeah, if that makes sense.
SungHee again for this 2020 vision. Thank you guys for joining and tuning in. Don't forget to follow Ochodias, VOYAGE Coffee. If you can, stay tuned to their social media so you can support them, donate whatever you can. Don't forget also to follow SungHee, me, Pequena Serifa, Stefano de Cristoforo, who made the amazing illustration of SungHee. Pop, who made this incredible our main illustration for this 2020 vision. Again, SungHee, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your experiences, your thoughts, your journey, and thank you guys for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and see you in the next session.
Thank you so much for having me. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.